Hello, this is Pastor Rick. I want to welcome you to this Lectionary Plus. I want to talk about the sermon, give you a little foretaste of the feast to come. But first to say Happy Mother's Day. Sunday, May 11th is Mother's Day, and it's also Good Shepherd Sunday. So we're putting both of those together. We're going to kind of combine the two, which is easy for me, and I know for many of you, because often we experience a very significant good shepherd in our lives through our mothers. That certainly was true for me. My mother was the good shepherd at home in both physical, emotional, and spiritual ways. And when we would meet for dinner, even though my dad was there for dinner every night, it was Mom who read from this wonderful book I want to show you right now, our little devotional book, Little Visits with God. When I see that book, I remember my mother as a good shepherd, and that fits with the text this morning because, David came up with this image, King David, because he was a shepherd and he saw his leadership of Israel as a good shepherd, and then he passed that image to other leaders in Israel. Jesus picks up on it, especially in John 10 today, and talks about him being our shepherd and the sheep hear his voice. Peter picks up on that in our text, also in Acts, that he takes on the mantle after the resurrection of Jesus of being a good shepherd. And then, of course, we are called to be good shepherds as well. Oh, but what a task that is, to be a good shepherd. I think John 10 would suggest before you're a good shepherd, you first have to learn how to be a sheep. And Jesus says, the sheep hear my voice, and I guard them and I take care of them, and I don't let any of them out of my protection. It's a wonderful promise that he gives us today that we want to hold on to in our service. And we'll notice too in Acts, we also have another good shepherd. That's Tabitha. Dorcas was her name in Greek, and she took care of the poor and she took care of the widows. And when she, as a good shepherd, fell, when she dies in the text, Peter, another good shepherd, comes and heals her, raises her from the dead. Good shepherd helping another good shepherd. So that's what we want to talk about on Sunday. Mother's Day, again, happy Mother's Day. Good shepherds, how we're called to be good shepherds, especially as the Lord's sheep. And now we want to turn to the lectionary and find out more about those texts and the stories that will guide our reflections on Sunday. All right, for our Lectionary Plus, we have two texts that will guide our reflections for Sunday from Acts 9, 36 to 43, and John 10, 22 to 30. This is a normal during Easter. Instead of an Old Testament reading, we have a reading from Acts of the Apostles and John 10, this Good Shepherd text, which is so beautiful. First of all, John 10, we know this image, grew up with this image of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, but notice John's clear. He says this interaction happened at the Feast of Dedication, what we would call Hanukkah. This was celebrating the freedom that the Jews won through a hard-fought battle against some Greek emperors, some Greek leaders. And they celebrate that freedom where they liberated the temple. They cleaned it out from all the pagan rituals which had been taking place there. These were the Maccabees. And the Maccabees were so revered, of course, we have Hanukkah, this cleansing of the temple, that they were referred to often, especially the leaders, as messiahs. And so at this festival where messiahs are being lifted up, the scribes and the Pharisees turn to Jesus and said, are you the one? Are you the Messiah? Especially during this festival, we have to ask you that question. And so it's very important, Jesus' response. You don't think I'm the Messiah because you're not one of my sheep, because my sheep hear my voice. So it's a great interaction where Jesus gives this promise saying, you hear my voice because you are my sheep and I will take care of you and I'll never let anyone pluck you out of my hand. It's a great promise here on Good Shepherd Sunday. But also, Acts 9, this great story about Tabitha, how she had taken care of widows, that she made cloth for them and gave them gifts took care of them, and their widows. They had all experienced loss, at least the loss of their husbands. And as a congregation, I'm sure they had gathered in that upper room many times, but here they are. Tabitha, her name is Dorcas in Greek, which means she worked in both communities, the Greek community and the Jewish community. She's died. And so once again, these widows now gather around the good shepherd, Tabitha, who had taken care of them. Particularly sad moment. So sad, in fact, that these widows of the whole congregation send 2 delegates to Peter. He was in a neighboring town, had healed a man who had been paralyzed for 8 years. And they thought maybe Peter could do something for us. They probably didn't even know exactly what Peter could do, but when they hear this follower of Jesus was doing some miraculous things, they invite him. Tabitha's already died. He comes and says a prayer, and then heals her, gives her back to the community. And so we'll want these 2 texts to guide us. It's interesting that during Easter, you always think there are only positive stories. You know, he is risen indeed. It's all about victory over the grave and victory in our lives. But here, the community has experienced death right after Easter, and how typical for many of us who experience the same thing. We experience tragedies even in the Easter season, but we also will hear words of hope on Sunday. So thanks for joining us for this important Lectionary Plus, preparing us for the 4th Sunday of Easter. Bye-bye now.